Hello, everyone. This is Brian Ankney with Auto Success Magazine. Yeah, I really appreciate you all taking the time to join us today for this webinar. Today we're going to learn more about finding more used car buyers with zip code targeting, an extension from our previous webinar with Pat. Today's presenter is Pat Bennett from Showroom Logic. A couple of things I'd like to remind you to do is, one, if you haven't joined Auto Success webinars yet, go to Facebook and join the group. It's a place where you can find out about future webinars and interact with speakers from webinars we've done in the past, webinars we're doing now, and you can even suggest ideas that you'd like to see as webinars in the future. Stick around at the end of the presentation, because Pat's going to offer you a free report where you can get some zip code information on for your dealership. And also, if you look on the right side of your screen, that little pane that pops up for GoToWebinar, there's a spot where it says questions with a plus sign right next to it. If you click that, you're able to type in questions. Please enter questions throughout the presentation. We'll address all of them at the end, and you're welcome to ask more at the end. So please enter your questions there. And also, if you'd like to interact with us after the webinar, don't forget, go to Auto Success Webinars on Facebook. Pat, go ahead and take it away, my friend.
Sounds good. Thanks, Brian. I'm really excited to... Hello? Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Brian?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. So yeah, I'm excited today to discuss this topic. It's where data, digital marketing, and the used car landscape combine. And I feel like as an industry, we still aren't letting data drive our decision making as much as we should. And data is one of the things that drove me to this industry in the first place. And so I really hope that today I can kind of open your eyes a little bit to some of the data you already have access to, and maybe could be using to leverage with your digital marketing, and also some third-party data that can be paired with it in order to have even better decision making. So I want to first start by talking about the used car landscape. And used cars have a special place for me in the company, because we actually started as a used car only tool. I helped co-found the company in 2008, and it was actually during the recession when new car sales plummeted and used cars became more crucial than ever for dealerships. And something interesting has been happening with used cars over the last few quarters, and this year will definitely get interesting as well. And I think for some dealers, they might find it as a year of opportunity for used. They kind of look ahead and let data drive their decision making, and maybe for others it'll be a year of chaos where we're not taking advantage of used as much as we could. And I think it really just comes down to whether, as a dealership, you're prepared and have a digital marketing plan for your used vehicles. Because those who are prepared need not fear. And I'm going to talk today about what the experts are saying. Look at some of the data you're probably already sitting on, plus look at some additional third-party data to help you create this plan. So Edmunds put out a report recently that talked about some of the trends they were seeing in Q3 of last year around used vehicles. And what's interesting is we're seeing that vehicle age of these used cars is getting shorter and shorter, meaning that the cars hitting the used car market are actually very young. They're actually pretty close to being new cars. So we see that the majority of the cars kind of flooding the market are these kind of young used vehicles that are actually increasing in price. And that's actually, we've actually seen the largest jump in used car prices ever. And it's because of these lease returns and other things coming off these really good years we've had for new vehicles. That is hitting the market. And so that the flood of inventory has made the prices high. And what's interesting is there's actually been a huge gain of used cars being financed over 60 months now even. It's actually, as I mentioned, the largest gain on record. And this can actually now have an effect on new vehicle sales, and I'll get to that in a second. But the other thing we're saying is that certified pre-owned has actually reached an all-time high as well. So consumers are understanding more what certified pre-owned means. In many surveys, they're actually saying that they're willing to pay a little more. And dealers, I think, are also having more certified pre-owned inventory to sell because of a lot of those lease returns and younger vehicles coming. So you know, what does this mean? What do some of these things mean? Well, according to NADA guides, they think that there's going to be a price drop on used vehicles in 2016 and 17 of about 4.5% because there's going to be more supply. Even more of these vehicles are going to come off leases or hit the market. And so with the rising supply, obviously it's going to put pressure on used vehicle prices. What it's also going to do is put pressure on new car sales as well. Some experts like Tom Contos from Odessa, he says people do need to consider the softening of used car values as a factor that may dampen new car sales in 2016 from what they otherwise may have been. So, you know, there's definitely a threat because the price of these newer used vehicles is going to go down, and they'll become even more attractive for people searching for a car. They think, oh, I can get a used car discounted way less than the new car, and it's only 2 or 3 years old, so it might even still be the same body style and have a lot of the same features. So I'm not trying to paint a picture of doom and gloom at all. It really becomes to, you know, letting the data help you prepare and just ensure that you can adapt if this really does start to happen. And if new car sales have some pressure this year, then you can have a used strategy that will help you continue to sell cars. So I think, you know, just as a data junkie, I really like to use knowledge like this to help you prepare and create a strategy. And so in talking to a lot of dealers that I associate with, one of the things I always look at is around used is whether they have an off-brand used marketing strategy. And what I mean by that is, you know, if it's a Ford store, do they have a used strategy around Toyotas or around Hondas or Hyundais or Dodge? Because they, you know, obviously sell those cars as well. In fact, when we look at just a random dealer in our database, we can see that they, this is a Ford dealer in Texas. They have 10 Toyotas in stock, 7 Nissans, 5 Kias, and so forth, and it's actually across 23 makes. So you think, you know, this dealer is a Ford dealer, really knows Ford vehicles, really knows on the new car side how to market them, how to put a plan together. But when it comes to the off-brand used vehicles, from what they're used to selling, many dealers don't really have a strategy. And, you know, I can't really understand why, because when we actually dig in deeper and look at the data, we actually see that the used vehicles sometimes that aren't of the same make as the dealer actually can sell faster. So a lot of people in this industry talk about turn, just kind of measuring turn as an indicator of how well you're able to sell used cars in a market. And when we analyze this dealer's data, you can actually see that across makes has an average turn that varies over 6 months. So I made Ford in blue, so you can kind of see it there in the center, but we see that Volkswagen, Lexus, Mitsubishi, these makes of used vehicles for this dealership actually turn pretty fast in this market, where GMC, Kia, Ram, Hyundai, you know, move a little slower. And so it's important that as we understand, you know, that different makes will actually turn differently. It requires putting a plan behind these, and you know, I think kind of a quick learning here is to try to put a plan around Hyundais or Ram or Kia that, you know, you have a few in stock of. Okay, are we good? I heard that that note there.
Actually, you know what? I had it. When we had an error for a second, would you mind starting over again? Hey everybody, this is Brian Ankney with Auto Success Magazine. I apologize for that. Somehow we had a technical difficulty there. My assistant Hannah just called and said that you know, the attendees weren't doing it, so I weren't seeing it, so I just started it over again. I apologize for that. I'm not sure what the technical difficulty was, but we're going to get started right now. A few minutes late. I'm Brian Ankney. I'm with Auto Success. Our presenter today is Pat Bennett with Showroom Logic. Today we're going to learn more information about how to find more used car buyers with zip code targeting. And please stick around at the end because we have a free report that you're able to get some zip code information for your dealership, and we'll provide that at the end of the webinar. Also, if you have any questions, please go to the question function on the right side of the page, and you can just go ahead and click the plus sign that's right next to questions, and enter your questions in. You can enter them in any time throughout the webinar. We're going to address all of them at the end. And then if you could please, if you haven't joined Auto Success Webinars yet on Facebook, please do, because Auto Success Webinars is a place where you can interact with our speakers, and you can interact with me and suggest future webinar topics that you'd like to see covered. Pat, I apologize for that. I'm not sure what happened, but we had a technical difficulty, but now we're back on, and please take it away, my friend.
Okay, thanks. I guess it was good practice. So, you know, I'm excited today to discuss this topic with you, and you know, glad those who are attending are interested. Really found that with this topic, it's really where data, digital marketing, and the used car landscape combine. And I feel like as an industry, we're still not allowing data to drive our decision making as much as we could. In fact, data was actually one of the things that drove me to this industry, because I'm not one of those guys that's been in auto forever. But data was one of the things that really was attractive to me, that there's so much data in this industry that can drive decision making, but I still feel there's so many opportunities for us to do that. And so today we're going to focus on used cars, and used cars actually have a special place for me and my company. I actually helped co-found the company in 2008 during the recession, and as you guys all know, this was when new car sales plummeted, and used car sales became crucial for dealerships, with new car sales kind of flattening out and dropping. And so, you know, some interesting things have been happening with used cars over the last few quarters, and this year will definitely get interesting as well. And I think for those are dealerships that are prepared and are thinking about their used vehicles and how it plays in to their overall strategy, will find it a year of opportunity. And
hey,
we'll
Pat,
be able to.
Pat, can you make it full screen? Your presentation?
It should be.
Okay. It's showing up in the format of each slide, and then with your notes underneath.
Oh, it is? Okay, let me try something real quick.
Yeah.
How's that?
It's switching. Now I'm seeing all your browsers.
Alrighty. Give me a second here.
Okay.
How's that look?
Right now I'm still seeing your browser screen. Here we go. Looks like it's going now.
That look better?
It just looks black now. Everybody, please hang with us just for a second. We're having a little technical difficulty. Yeah. If you'd like, I can drive the presentation if you'd like that. I have it.
Well, let me just give me one more second here. Let's see if this does it.
Okay.
Okay, what do you see now?
Right now, I just see the find more. Oh, here we go. I got a mountain. It's like a straight face cliff mountain.
Is that better?
Actually, I just have a black screen right now. It's just a black screen right now.
Yeah, that's strange because we had it working before. Let me just try this one more time. All right, do you want to try sharing your screen? Maybe that'll...
Yeah. Okay, everybody. This is Brian. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and so everybody can see the presentation. Just give me 1 second, and we'll be good to go. Well, okay. All right. Which you want me to be to the mountain with? I'm on the mountain with the rainbow picture that your brother took.
Perfect. So let me pull this up here. Yep, I can see it. Great. Yeah, you can go to the next slide. So, those who don't really have a digital strategy, it could look a little more like this, a little more chaotic of a year. And I think it comes down to whether you're prepared or not. So go ahead and move to the next slide. Those are prepared need not fear. And so today we'll talk about what the experts are saying, look at some of the data you're already sitting on, plus look at some third-party data to help you create a digital battle plan. So let's go to the next slide. This is a report that came out from Edmunds, and they're showing that in Q3 of 2015, there was a huge jump in the vehicle age of used vehicles. And this is due to the good years of new sales that led to so many competitive leases, being returned, all those good years of new, of selling so many vehicles. It's now flooding the market. These used cars are coming back, or those new cars are coming back and now being sold as used, and they're becoming younger. Well, what does that mean? Well, go to the next slide. It actually shows that it's driving the price of used vehicles higher than ever before. Actually, we saw the largest gain on record, and this big gain of pricing actually has also led to some pretty aggressive financing terms, where people are starting to finance cars, used cars over 60 months now, which is pretty interesting to see. And it's actually the largest gain on record. We're also seeing, go to the next slide, that with certified pre-owned vehicles, we also saw an all-time high with sales, and this is due to customers now understand what pre-owned means. There's actually surveys that show that they're willing to pay a little more for certified pre-owns as well, and probably because there's a lot of supply for certified pre-owns too, because of all those leases coming back, and being young enough to certify and have low enough mileage to enter into that program. So what does all this mean? Well, if we go to the next slide, we see that NADA is actually forecasting that there's going to be a price drop in this year of about 4.5% of used vehicles, actually this year and next. Since more of these lease returns will hit the market, supply gets to catch up with demand, and there's going to be a lot of these vehicles, more than before, where it could actually start putting some pressure on new vehicle sales. If someone can get a car that's only 2 or 3 years old that maybe has the same body style or features as some of the newer cars, and there's a lot of them, so the price starts dropping on them, then that can actually have an impact on new car sales. So go to the next slide. Tom Contos from Odessa, he's quoted to say, people do need to consider the softening of used car values as a factor that may dampen new car sales in 2016 from what they otherwise might have been. So there's definitely a threat to new car sales with used car prices going down and these used cars being so new. So go to the next slide. I'm not trying to paint a picture of doom and gloom or capitalize on fear or anything like that. I just think when we ensure we're listening to the landscape, understand the data, we can prepare ourselves, and then we don't have to fear. So it's not really doom and gloom. I think actually this is a pretty cool year because new vehicle sales could still have a great year, but there could be a really big opportunity for used car sales in your dealership. So just really trying to start out by hoping we can all agree that this means it's a year of opportunity. So go to the next slide. One thing, as we ask dealers to kind of see how they're prepared is understand whether they have an off-brand used marketing strategy. What I mean by that is if you're a Ford store, you have a strategy around your used Toyotas or your used Hyundais or your used GMCs, for example. And I think that's important to consider, especially when you start looking at your stock and see that you have used cars across many different makes. So in the next slide, you actually see that there's, for this dealership that I pulled, a Ford dealer in Texas, 61 of the 170 used vehicles in stock are actually non-Ford vehicles. So that's 34% of his used inventory across 23 makes. And typically, dealers don't have insight into sales for these used vehicles in their market, but it's actually really crucial to have. So in the next slide, we actually look at average turn by these makes over the last 6 months. So we looked at the inventory they had and when those vehicles were selling, and we grouped it by make. And you see that I highlighted Ford at 18.3 days, but we see that many other makes like Lexus and Volkswagen, Mitsubishi actually are turning a lot faster in his market for used. And we see that GMC, Kia, Ram are much slower. So it's data like this that helps us start to understand, when you get a car from trade-in or you go to the auction, focusing on the vehicles that you're able to sell well in your market will do you well, but also putting a digital marketing strategy behind the vehicles that can sell fast, or helping those that have historically sold slow sell faster is really starting to get digital marketing in line with your business goals. So in the next slide, you actually see that we see different turn by body style as well. So this is this dealer in Texas. They're selling trucks very, very well, really, very fast, used trucks. Where we see that hatchback in the market, I guess no one really wants those. And so it's also important to understand by body style, what vehicles in this market do people want? In what areas are they buying them? And can you market to those people to try to help turn those used vehicles faster? So as we now start talking about digital marketing and kind of how digital marketing can play into this and using this data, it's important to understand kind of the dynamic of these buyers. So go ahead and go to the next slide. One of the things to keep in mind is that only 39% of the traffic to your site will end up contacting you. So we're saying here that 61% of people who show up to the dealership, they're not in your database. They didn't call you and they didn't email you. And so the majority of people who are coming in have viewed your website, have already shopped you, and have decided to come, hopefully do business with you. So that really leaves you 39% of the traffic to your website that you can actually track. So if you're focusing too heavily on lead counts, then you might be missing out on a lot of other data points that can kind of show the quality of these people. I'm not saying leads and phone calls aren't important. We love those in this industry. But it's not the end-all be-all of understanding if your digital marketing is working. And so we see, go to the next slide, that there's really a wide gap between the data you have and your marketing strategies. Again, I was talking about the love I have for data in this industry, and I can just imagine if all of you were using the data you have to better help your vendors do a better job for you. I mean, you're paying them to help you with marketing, paying them with strategy. Make sure you're sharing your data with them as well so that they can tailor the marketing efforts towards what's being done and really shorten the gap between what you're trying to accomplish in store and what you're marketing. So let's go to the next slide. Let's start looking at some data here for a dealer. I was talking about the quality of used car traffic a little earlier and how we might not be able to always measure some of the things like form leads. But what's interesting is if we look in Google Analytics for this dealer, what I actually did is created a few different segments. So created a segment for used only, meaning these are people who came to the website and only viewed used vehicles. Then we create a segment for new only, meaning they came to the website and only looked at new vehicles. Then we combined people who looked at new and used. And then people who didn't look at inventory at all, so maybe more interested in parts or service. And what's interesting is when we look at that used only segment, it's about 25% of all traffic, so about a quarter of the people, 1 in 4, who come to the website are interested in used vehicles. We actually see they stay longer on the site, they view more pages, and they're actually converting at a higher rate. So whether you like selling used cars or not, you need to be leveraging the used vehicles you have and marketing them, because a lot of cases like this one, we see that traffic can actually perform really well, and in some cases actually outperform new vehicles as well. Let's go to the next slide. So another way to look at this is to start understanding the relationship between website traffic and what actually happens with sales. So kind of took the same data out of the last slide and put it on the left in a pie graph to show the distribution of traffic by intent on the website, and then actually look at actual sales. And then what we can do is derive a ratio from the used traffic that's coming and how many used sales actually happen, and do that for new as well. And in the next slide, you'll actually see that the used car traffic that comes to the site, go ahead and move to the next slide. The used car traffic that comes to the site actually ends up buying more frequently than the new car traffic. So actually 2.53% of users for this dealership, unique users who came to the website, led to actual sales. That's the ratio we saw. And meaning if you're able to drive more used traffic, then now it'll actually lead to more buyers than if you're able to drive new car traffic. I'm not saying this is the case every time. I'm saying you might be sitting on similar data and you might not even know it. And if this is the case for your dealership, having a used car strategy is crucial so that you can take advantage of what's going on in your market. What's interesting as well with used is oftentimes we see, cost of used 20 to 30% cheaper. And so it can actually be cheaper to reach these people. They can actually buy at a faster rate than new. And if you're doing well on your stock and inventory, you could be actually making more gross on used, as we know. So let's go ahead and take a breath and summarize where we're at. So let's look at here. Yeah, thank you. So in summary, what I've said so far is used car supply is increasing and could have an effect on new car sales. Now, whether it does or not, used car supply is increasing. So we need to, ensure that we're going to be selling those. Used cars turn at different rates, body style and make, for example. And there's the other segments too. I mean, you could segment by pricing tiers or other things and actually understand turns so that you know historically in your market, which vehicles are going to turn faster and maybe put your digital marketing behind ones that you need to turn quicker. So we also see that used car traffic does convert into sales. Many reports that we've looked at and analyzed, that used car traffic is very high quality and does convert. And oftentimes used car traffic with digital marketing is cheaper. So if we're agreeing to all these points, then why don't we have a targeted used car marketing strategy more often in dealerships? And that's what I'd like to talk about now is if you are going to turn on a targeted used car marketing strategy, what the different components are. Now in our company, we believe that every part of marketing has a single job, every marketing campaign, right? So we actually consider make and model combinations as separate marketing campaigns. So your used Toyotas is one marketing campaign, your used Kias is another marketing campaign, because each one needs a budget and each one needs different targeting because of what's going on in your market. You cannot apply the same type of marketing strategy behind your different make and models. It doesn't make sense based on the data we just looked at, where each of them turn at a different rate, they have different pricing, they have different body styles. So we need to understand and just remember, with each car being different, the appeal to people in your market is going to be different. And we really need to have a targeted marketing strategy for each one of those. So when I talk about this marketing campaign, again, think of each vehicle or each make of vehicle in your dealership. The first part is targeting, and that comes down to fishing where the fish are. If you're going to turn on digital marketing for used cars, for a specific used car, you need to target in areas where people are actually buying that car and not put too much budget in places where they're not buying. The next thing is having an ad, and the whole point of that is to get customers to click on the ad, to drive them to your website. The ad needs to be compelling. You need to ensure, look at your competitive landscape and ensure if someone sees your ad, they're going to want to have a reason to buy. When they come to your website, the whole point of the website is to build trust and make them feel like, hey, the car I'm looking for is here, and the pricing is fair, and they're communicating with me well. I should come into the store. And then really when they come to the store, it's to sell the car. So you can't depend on any one of these to take someone all the way through. You can't just target well and assume that that's going to lead people to buy cars. I mean, each one of these parts you got to do right and have to do well in order to sell more used vehicles. So go to the next slide. Let's talk about budgets. We talked about how every used vehicle is not worth the same. Why would we treat them the same? Why say, okay, I have a $5,000 for my used vehicle. That's my used vehicle budget for this month. I'm just going to spread it out across all my used vehicles. It just doesn't make sense based on the data we're looking at. Go to the next slide. There's a way I like to think about it. It basically becomes, if you're doing that, taking that budget and spreading it across, it basically becomes a feeding frenzy. I mean, you're basically throwing some money toward all these different vehicles and letting the market decide which vehicles are going to get the most love. And really what happens is the models that need the most end up eating the most. So for example, a used Corvette takes a lot more buyers or a lot more potential shoppers coming to your site than like a used Malibu or a used Cruze or a lower price vehicle. And so that Corvette could be sucking up a lot of the budget away from your other vehicles that don't need as much traffic. And it could potentially be blocking them because you haven't allocated budget properly. So when we're talking about, separating these vehicles as a marketing campaign, every marketing campaign needs a budget. And so your used vehicles, when you classify them into make or body style, those vehicles need a budget as well. And that budget needs to be isolated away from another used vehicle segment. So now let's talk about targeting. So it becomes important to decide how you actually define your used car market. When we look at a lot of data out there, there's data by state or by DMA or by sometimes by a group of cities. And what we find in those cases is that data isn't always, really low funnel enough or deep enough to mean something, right? So we know that as we get deeper with data and down to the local level, the data becomes more meaningful. So it's important that you actually look at your addressable market and define that for your used vehicles. Don't measure yourself or look at areas that are in places where people just won't come to you. So typically, used car market can look, a little different than new, but in many cases, we've seen that they're pretty similar. I mean, in this case, we see for this dealership, based on his location, 50% of his used vehicle sales are actually happening very close to his dealership. And we want to ensure that we're maximizing those opportunities before maybe looking too far. But we also find in regions, like for example, how he sells used vehicles north of him could be very different than how he sells vehicles south of him. So it's important to break up these regions by market so we can understand that. So in the next slide, we can kind of see it in a different way, where if we look at if this dealer is going to basically say, okay, for all my used cars, I'm just going to focus on a 40-mile radius. No real reason, that's just kind of what feels right. Well, what happens if you do that is you could be targeting too much. I mean, in this case, this dealership, 50% of his sales is actually happening in 0 to 10 miles around his dealership in basically 30 zip codes. So that leaves, about 75 zip codes that are out there that aren't getting that don't have the buyers that are going to be buying the vehicles he has. And so again, if we target too broadly and kind of get lazy with our targeting, we're not honing in on the places where the actual buyers are. So it's crucial that we not only isolate budgets, we also isolate targeting methods for our campaigns and ensure the targeting for each make or for each body style is in line with what's happening in the market. So in order to do that, you need third-party data, and you can access this data through a few different vendors. You can go to them and you can buy it, and it'll be a great layer of intelligence that you can add on in order to understand your vehicles in your market. Polkadot, Experian, Dominion, these are just a few. Really the backbone of it is DMA registration data, because that is can be purchased through these companies from the DMVs, which then allows you to see by zip code which used vehicles are selling the best in your market. And I'm going to show some examples of that in a bit. So really what I'm bringing home here, let's go to the next slide, is that with better targeting and with better budgets, you can actually ensure that you have better ROI. And the spray and pray or shotgun approach is really dying. The dealerships that are getting smart with their data are starting to see something more like the next slide, where it's more like a sniper rifle approach. Go ahead and go to the next slide, where we're able to hit the ROI right in the bullseye, and a lot of the spray that was happening with shotgun is gone. And we can see that here in this slide, where a dealership, a Chevy dealership, was noticing that they had a lot of used Mustangs coming in stock, and that was just the dynamic of their market. And they wanted to create a digital marketing campaign that focused on selling Mustangs, their used Mustangs, faster. So what we did is created a digital marketing campaign that had a used Mustang budget We gave Mustangs its own budget again so that it wouldn't pull from other used vehicles. We gave Mustangs its own targeting, so we focused on an area that made sense for him. And then we ran that campaign, and it started in September. So what this graph is actually showing is that over time, the used Mustang age for those vehicles actually started declining. So the used Mustangs he had in stock actually started selling faster and faster as that marketing campaign was turned on. A similar thing happened with a Honda dealership in the next slide, where they wanted to focus on their used Sonatas being a vehicle that they had in stock a lot. So even for on-brand, the same brand that you're selling as a franchise dealer can work as well for used. And they turned on their campaign in July. So we see the same trend happen. And this is with even more vehicles, obviously, because they have a lot of Sonatas being a Hyundai store. So these used Sonatas that were coming into stock with a digital marketing campaign behind them that had its own budget and had its own targeting, they were able to increase the turn for those vehicles and start selling them faster. Who doesn't want to sell their used inventory faster? I don't know one who does. So to sum it up, each used vehicle requires a unique digital battle plan. And when we're saying a digital battle plan, that's a marketing campaign. It needs its own budget isolated away, and it also needs its own targeting. And that targeting is going to vary. Your used Mustangs or used Mazdas or used Corollas or Camrys, they're going to be in different places than the other vehicles. And so trying to just kind of turn on a blanket approach of targeting is definitely not what the data supports. And we can definitely do better there. So let's take a quote from someone I think we all see and respect, most interesting man in the world. He says, "I don't always market used cars, but when I do, I let my data do the talking." And that's really my hope for this year. 2016. Let's let this be the year of used data, that we're understanding within the dealership what we're capable of, what our turn history has been, turn on campaigns that focus on what's going on in the market, and then track it over time to ensure that it's bringing us the ROI that we want to see. And I think if we do that, we're going to have a really terrific year. So now I actually want to take the time to look at some live data. So I'm going to see if we can get my screen working this time, because I think you were able to see the browser last time, so we might be in good shape.
Okay, I'll pass control over to you.
Perfect.
All righty. Okay, you should have control, Patrick.
All right, so let's see. Are you able to see my browser?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. So what I want to show you now is a tool we use internally to help dealerships derive their used vehicle strategy. It's called Zip Driven. And it takes this registration data I was talking about before, but layers it in a way where we can really see opportunities fast. And for this dealership, it's a Ford store inside of San Antonio. I want to kind of show you how we can look at the data and create a battle plan. We talked about how important the off-brand strategy is. That's where I want to focus today, where I'm looking at all their vehicles in stock, and then we have some other data I'll talk about in a second. One of the first things I'm going to do is do a filter, and I'm going to say, I just want to focus on my cars that are not Ford. I'm a Ford store. I have a lot of used Fords in stock. I want to focus on non-Fords. So let me take this filter off. 1 second. All right, so we have a Ford filter on, so now I'm looking at all my non-Fords in stock in my market. And we created a market that we're looking at 0 to 10 miles, 10 to 20, 20, 30, and so forth around the dealership. And what I want to focus on first is, again, trying to find opportunities within my used vehicles that are non-Fords. Obviously, we could do it for Fords, but this is where I'm going to focus today. So I can filter by looking at, okay, what vehicles do I have the most in stock of? So this Jeep Wrangler looks interesting. I have 5 in stock. They have an average age of about 21 days. I can kind of see the average price. And then I see that around my store, the big number shows me market sales in last quarter. So I'm looking at the data from last quarter. and I'm looking at where the majority of sales were happening. And we see that in 10 to 20 miles around me, that's where 35% of all sales happened within the market I've created. And so if I want to start focusing on Jeep Wrangler, I have a limited budget, and I'm not just going to try to, as we talked about, put a targeting method, just a big ring around my store. I really want to understand which zip codes are driving these sales. And so we can actually dive deeper into Wrangler to understand a little more about what's going on and to drive a plan. And again, this is just taking that DMV registration data, pairing it with inventory data, and then creating a way to then visualize it. So let's see if this report's going to come up. Oh, it came up. Okay, so now we're going to look at what actual zip codes are driving those sales. So we talked about how I'm going to scroll down to the 10 to 20 range. This is where the majority of sales were happening, as we remembered. And you can actually see by zip code which zip codes were driving the most. So what's interesting is the 78254, this is where the majority of people were living when they bought a used Wrangler. And actually you can see within 10 to 20 miles the zip codes that drove the most sales. We start getting down to some of these other zip codes, even with high populations. I mean, down here it's 50,000 people compared to some of these other zip codes. There was only one Wrangler sale. So people down there in the south of my market are simply not buying Wrangler. So why would I focus any of my marketing dollars there? So again, if I created a ring around this region, then I would be including some zip codes where the buyers haven't historically been. And historical data is used for forecasting. And so if over the last quarter there were no buyers in that market, there's not all of a sudden going to pop up 7 buyers. And that's where we look at trending and some other things. So I want to focus on the zip codes that can help, if I targeted, that's where the buyers are going to be. So I can see those easily here. And then much digital marketing, many of the different mediums allow you to target by zip code. And so it's pretty easy to highlight the different zip codes you may want to focus on. You can copy those or export it and then upload it into Facebook or AdWords or Bing as the zip codes you want to focus on to ensure you have budget for where the buyers actually are. And so you can start creating that strategy. The other thing to look at is maybe some conquesting. We talked about body style being a really important piece of turn and market data. And what I'm pulling up now is a conquest report where it's actually going to pull sales for other vehicles that have the same segment. In this case, it looks like Xterra is the biggest one that I might need to worry about. Now, Wrangler's still beating out in many cases, but that could also show me some areas of opportunity. So we can also see the other dealerships that are selling a lot of Wranglers. I talked about the importance of having the proper messaging. We have good targeting, we have a budget. Well, we also need to ensure we have the right messaging. So what we can actually do is understand who the other players are in this market. So I was talking about focusing on that 10 to 20 region. So I'm going to go down there, and I can see one of the top dealerships selling used Wranglers is this Dodge, Chrysler Jeep, this CarMax, this Ancira store, and that starts to help me understand who they are, where they are, how far away they are from me, and then also how many they sold. So if I'm going to put a used Wrangler ad out there, and again, I'm a Ford store, I want to ensure that I have messaging that is going to allow people to come to me over some of my competitors. So going to their websites, kind of understanding what they might be doing, look at some of their messaging. That'll just help ensure you have the right message now that you're putting the right targeting in place. So the other thing I want to talk about is the importance of markets. And we wanted to make it easy for dealerships to create markets in their area that mean something to them. And so we did, by default, create these rings around the dealership, but we also wanted a way to create custom markets. And so before this webinar, I created one just to kind of save on time, where I took that 10 to 20 ring where we were showing a lot of sales and actually broke it up into north and south, because I wanted to understand with these markets if northern buyers, those people north of me, behave differently than people in the south. So I created these 2 different markets. And then what's really cool is I can actually go back to my reports, and I can pull that same report I was showing before, but this time I'm going to turn on my used market that I created. And so it's now going to take the used car data that I have with my inventory and tell me how the performance is within my custom market. So instead of those 0 to 10 rings and things, we're actually now looking at the data by north and south. And we see in many cases for some of these vehicles, they actually sell better in the north, but some of them sell better in the south. So that's interesting. Again, by understanding our market better, we see the Civic buyers. If I'm going to sell a used Civic, I want to focus on south of me, because 77% of the sales that happen in 10 to 20 miles were happening in the south compared to the north. But for Jeep Wrangler, we actually see that more of the sales were happening in the north overall. So we can see by vehicle that it actually can vary north to south. And so again, if I focus on the vehicles that I have, off-brand vehicles I have a lot in stock, or based on the ones that are maybe growing in age, I want to understand where those vehicles are selling the best. So if I turn on, give it a budget and turn on campaign targeting, that I'm focused on the areas where the buyers are. And so this is, again, as I mentioned, a tool we created to make it really easy for dealers to create their digital battle plan by pairing their own data and third-party data together, so that they can create a strategy that actually makes sense and put their money in targeting where the buyers actually are, instead of kind of the spray and pray, shotgun approach we talked about. So as a reminder, Brian talked about, if you go to zipdriven.com, you can actually pull a free report and understand what some of this data looks like, in order to just get a feel for your market and test drive the tool a little bit and see if it's something that can help you with your strategy. But overall, just to summarize, I feel like 2016 is going to be a really fun year for used, with all the supply coming and with the possible pricing pressure it could put on new. I think the dealerships that use data to create their battle plans and supply that data to the vendors that are working with are going to have a much better year than those that don't. And so my hope really, if you take anything away from this webinar today, is that you're sitting on a lot of valuable data, and I hope that you take the time to look at it and also work with your vendors and partners to ensure they understand it, so that you can create digital battle plans and marketing campaigns that actually are in line with your business goals. So with that, Brian, I want to kick it back to you, and hopefully we can answer some questions.
Yes. Our first question is, what is your recommended allocation per car when you are setting up a budget for a store?
Oh man, that's an awesome question, and I wish it was the same across the board. The nice thing with digital marketing, again, is you can pivot rather quickly. So kind of the guidance I give dealers sometimes, if you kind of figure a dollar per day per car. So if you have 100 used vehicles in stock, I think $1 per day, that could be about $10,000 if you want to focus on all of your used vehicles. So a smaller store, maybe 30, 40 used cars could be around $3,000 or $4,000 for your used campaign. So the great thing, again, you can turn it on kind of with that, and then over time, pull back or put more money in based on what you're seeing. But that's kind of a standard way that we use. But there's so many factors, it's really hard to say what'll work for everybody.
Perfect. Wait, and I want to let everybody know, just in case you missed the beginning, if you go to the right side of your page on the panel, that's the GoToWebinar panel, there's a question place there where you can hit the plus, and when you hit the plus, it'll open it up. You can type in questions. Also, I'm gonna put a link into the chat function when we're finished, so that everybody can try this out for free. Let's get, and I'll ask the next question. Can someone use Zip Driven if they're not using Showroom Logic, Pat?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're trying to let this tool help dealerships with any of their marketing campaigns. I mean, when you think of digital marketing of all the different places you could be going with pre-roll or Facebook or Bing or Google or direct mail. I mean, we just want this data to help dealers. And so you can absolutely use this tool even if you're not signed up as an AdLogic customer.
Cool. How does this integrate with AdLogic?
Yeah, that's a great question as well. Today there isn't a a real streamlined integration, but it's on the roadmap. You know, as we kind of released this tool and allowed dealers to start using it, what they're starting to ask for now is bringing in their results, like their analytics results and AdWords results and things, into the dashboard, so they could start overlaying the results they're seeing from the plan that they put together. And so that's an integration we're working very hard on, but it's not there today.
Okay. Can I create a custom market or remove zip codes if they aren't important to me?
Yeah, and hopefully, you know, the tool I showed gave a little insight to that. I know I went over it pretty fast, but as I was talking and showing the data, when we were looking at the data, you know, between north and south sales, I mean, it is absolutely crucial that you create markets to better understand where you should put those dollars, because it simply does not, it's not the same story for all of the used vehicles you have in stock. And so being able to create a custom market where you can either add zip codes quickly by kind of pasting them in bulk, or by just clicking on the map and adding them. But yeah, we want dealers to be, you know, creating as many markets as they need to in order to understand the data better.
Okay. Are you getting new car data from the OEM or the DMV, Pat?
So today it is the DMV, the sales and registration data. It just becomes very difficult to try to get the data directly from OEMs. Not all OEMs play the same way, and their formatting of data is very different. So today we are leveraging DMV registration data, which by nature does have a little lag, but as I was talking about, I mean, with any statistical analysis, to create forecasts, you use historical data. So we found that even with a lag of 30 days or so, you know, things don't change in a market too quickly where you can't rely on that type of data. So today it is all from the DMV.
Okay. Is there a way a salesman can use this?
Oh, that's a really good question. So, I would think so. I think, you know, just understanding, you know, looking at your prospects, maybe seeing what zip codes they're in, you know, kind of going back through people you worked with in the past and kind of pairing the data together. I think there's a lot of applications for a salesperson to better understand what's going on in his market. So as he's talking to customers, he just has a better idea of where they're coming from and maybe where their propensity to buy is. So I have never been a salesman myself, but I'm sure there's ways to use it, and I'd also be really interested in hearing some of those ways dealerships are using it in that way.
Okay. Do you use existing dealer sales to create any of these models, or just bulk and registration data?
Today we're just using the third-party data. We are running some pilots of pulling in dealers' actual sales from the DMS, so it's a little more real-time with their own sales. That is on the roadmap, and we're working on that. But today, it is just with the data we're getting from Experian, which is the DMV data.
Okay. Is it possible, or even worthwhile, to integrate zip-driven data, Google Analytics, and AdWords?
I think it absolutely is. Again, if, you know, creating your battle plan within zip-driven down to the zip code level, you can then pull reports from analytics and AdWords by zip code as well. So you can actually see in AdWords where the clicks were coming from by zip code, and you can see if your battle plan's working. You know, you've targeted specific zip codes. Are you now getting clicks from those zip codes? And then how are those clicks performing within analytics? So that's exactly the type of thing I'd like to see more dealerships doing is you know, creating that plan that's very targeted, and then pulling the data from the different sources to understand if the plan is working.
Okay. Now everybody who's on right now, if you look in your chat function, it's a few below questions. The chat function right there, Rob has shared with us all a link where you can get a free report. Please go to your chat right now. If you have any issues, if you're unable to get it for whatever reason, please reach out to me. My name is Brian Ankney. My email address is Brian with an I at autosuccessonline.com, and I'll make sure you get it. I appreciate everybody coming. Oh, whoops, we had. Oh no, okay. I thought we had another question pop up. I appreciate everybody coming today, and please, if you haven't yet, join Auto Success webinars. It's a group on Facebook where you can find out about future webinars. You can also interact with our speakers, and if you have ideas of webinars you'd like to see in the future, please contact me via email or through the group, and we'll find somebody who can speak on that topic. Pat, I really appreciate you taking the time today. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners before we go?
Yeah, just anyone on the webinar will also send you a copy of it as well. So we'll send you the a recording so you can view it again or share it with other people. But really, just thank you for your time, and feel free to email me any questions or concerns. I love hearing from dealers, and just Pat at Showroom Logic. Pretty simple. So love to hear from you.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody. Please join us for future webinars, and I really appreciate you taking the time. I hope you learned something today that you can use in your business to sell more cars. Thank you for coming. Goodbye.